Welcome to the U.S. Air Force Museum, where history takes flight. Step back in time as we dive into the museum's early years gallery, a treasure trove of aviation's bold beginnings. From the fragile wings of the Wright brothers' 1909 military flyer to the daring machines that soared through World War I, this exhibit shows how it all started. Get ready to browse the planes that launched a new era of air power. Buckle up, our journey through the skies of the past begins now. The Montgolfier balloon is a revolutionary artifact of the Enlightenment era, marking humanity's first successful venture into manned flight and igniting the dream of conquering the skies. Though not a military asset in the modern sense, its early use for reconnaissance, most notably during the 1794 Battle of Fleurus by French revolutionary forces, hinted at aviation's future strategic value. The 1904 Chinook glider is an artifact in the lineage of aviation's early development, reflecting the ingenuity of Octave Chanute, a pivotal figure in bridging 19th-century experimentation with the Wright brothers' success. Designed and tested in 1904, this glider was an evolution of Chanute's earlier biplane designs, notably the 1896 model that influenced the Wrights. Though not as celebrated as powered aircraft, it was a critical stepping stone. Chanute's rigorous data collection and correspondence with the Wrights directly contributed to their breakthroughs. The Wright 1909 military flyer is a testament to the rapid evolution of aviation technology in the early 20th century. Developed by Orville and Wilbur Wright, this aircraft holds the distinction of being the world's first military airplane, purchased by the U.S. Army Signal Corps on August 2, 1909 for $30,000 after a series of successful test flights at Fort Myer, Virginia. Building on their groundbreaking 1903 flyer, the 1909 model was a single-engine, two-seat biplane with a wingspan of 36 feet 6 inches and a top speed of approximately 42 miles per hour, revolutionary for its time. Designed to meet the Army's specifications, it could carry 2 people, fly for an hour, and land safely on unprepared fields, demonstrating its practical utility for reconnaissance missions. The military flyer not only marked the birth of military aviation, but also symbolized the Wright brothers' transition from experimental pioneers to key figures in shaping modern warfare, setting the stage for the aerial arms race that would define the 20th century. Designed by French aviator Louis Blériot and first flown in 1909, the 11A monoplanet, constructed of wood, wire, and fabric, gained immortality when Blériot piloted an earlier variant across the English Channel on July 25, 1909, a 36-minute feat that shattered skeptics' doubts about flight's practicality. The 11A, a military adaptation, featured a 28-foot 6-inch wingspan and a 20-horsepower Inzani engine, achieving a modest 45 miles per hour, yet its lightweight frame and tractor propeller configuration set a template for future monoplanes. Adopted by the French and British militaries in small numbers before World War I, it served primarily for reconnaissance and training, its open cockpit exposing pilots to the elements. The Curtiss 1911 Model D stands as a striking emblem of aviation's rapid maturation in the pre-World War I era, showcasing Glenn Curtiss's innovative contributions to early flight. Introduced in 1911, the Model D, often dubbed the Curtiss Pusher, was a robust biplane with a distinctive rear-mounted engine and propeller, a design that contrasted with the Wright's forward propeller approach. Powered by a 60-horsepower Curtiss V8 engine, it boasted a wingspan of 38 feet 3 inches and could reach speeds of around 50 miles per hour, making it a versatile performer for its time. Notably, it was the first aircraft type purchased by the U.S. Army Signal Corps in quantity, with several variants delivered in 1911, signaling the military's growing investment in aviation beyond the Wright's initial offering. The Model D's rugged construction and adaptability for training and exhibitions, like Curtiss's daring 1910 flight down the Hudson River, highlighted its practical impact, cementing his reputation as a rival to the Wright brothers and a key architect of America's early air power. The Avro 504 is an enduring icon of early aviation, embodying both the fragility and potential of flight during and after World War I. First flown in 1913 by Britain's Elliott Verdon Roe, this versatile biplane became one of the most produced aircraft of its era, with over 10,000 built by 1927. The 504K variant, adapted for training with a universal engine mount compatible with multiple power plants, featured a sturdy wooden frame, fabric covering, and a 29-foot wingspan, offering stability and a top speed of around 95 miles per hour. Initially a reconnaissance and light bombing platform in 1914, it quickly transitioned into the Royal Air Force's premier trainer, shaping thousands of pilots who would define air combat's future. Its longevity, serving into the 1930s, and its appearance in civilian barnstorming shows underscore its adaptability and charm. The Curtiss JN-4 Jenny was an enduring icon of early American aviation, a biplane that transitioned from wartime utility to a cornerstone of the post-war flying culture. Over 6,800 were built, primarily as trainers for U.S. and Canadian pilots during World War I. Though it saw little combat, after the war, surplus Jennies flooded the civilian market, fueling the barnstorming craze, often in daredevil stunts or rural air shows, and ushered in the birth of airmail services. The Standard J-1 was a utilitarian workhorse of early American aviation, a biplane that bridged the gap between wartime experimentation and peacetime training. First flown in 1916 by the Standard Aero Corporation, the J-1 was a two-seat trainer powered by a 100-horsepower Hall-Scott engine, with a 43-foot 10-inch wingspan and a modest top speed of around 70 miles per hour. Designed as a cheaper alternative to the Curtiss JN-4 Jenny, it saw limited use during World War I due to its underpowered performance, but the U.S. Army acquired over 800 after the war for pilot training and mail service. Its wooden frame and fabric covering reflected the era's simplicity, though its reputation suffered from engine reliability issues. The J-1's legacy lies in its role as a stopgap, training early aviators and sustaining budding air infrastructure until more advanced designs took flight in the 1920s. Designed by Geoffrey de Havilland and first flown in 1916, the DH-4 was a two-seat biplane powered by a 400-horsepower Liberty 12 engine. It boasted a 43-foot wingspan and a top speed of 128 miles per hour, remarkable for its day. Entering British service in 1917 and later produced in the U.S. with a Liberty engine, it excelled as a day bomber, reconnaissance platform, and even an anti-submarine patrol craft. It could carry up to 460 pounds of bombs and was armed with Vickers and Lewis machine guns. Over 6,000 were built, with American versions serving into the 1920s, reflecting its rugged reliability despite early vulnerabilities like flammable fuel tanks. The DH-4's adaptability and performance bridged the gap between rudimentary wartime designs and the more specialized aircraft of the interwar years. The SPAD XIII was a cornerstone of World War I aviation, a rugged French fighter that embodied the Entente's push for air supremacy in the war's middle years. First flown in May 1916, the S-7 featured a 25-foot 8-inch wingspan, a 180-horsepower Hispano-Suiza 8A engine, and a top speed of 127 miles per hour. It was armed with a single Vickers machine gun synchronized to fire through the propeller. Entering service in late 1916, over 3,500 were built, serving French, British, and American squadrons like the U.S. 103rd Aero Squadron, where aces such as Georges Guymer praised its durability and dive speed. Its reliability made it a workhorse on the Western Front, excelling in escort and patrol roles until the superior SPAD XIII succeeded it in 1917. The Thomas Morse S-4 Sea Scout was a spirited American contribution to World War I aviation training, a compact fighter trainer that bolstered the U.S. Army Air Service's nascent pilot corps. First flown in 1917 by the Thomas Morse Aircraft Corporation, the S-4C, a single-seat biplane with a 26-foot 6-inch wingspan, was powered by an 80-horsepower Lerone rotary engine, achieved a top speed of 95 miles per hour. Its construction was wood and fabric, and it was armed with a single Marlin machine gun for combat simulation. Over 400 were built, primarily as advanced trainers that served at stateside fields like Rockwell and Issoudun, where its agility and responsiveness prepared American pilots for European fighters like the Nieuport 28. Nicknamed the Tommy by trainees, its simplicity and reliability shone, but it faded from service by the early 1920s as surplus Jennies and new designs took over. The Nieuport 28 C-1 was a nimble, spirited French fighter that bridged the gap for American pilots when U.S. domestic designs lagged. Designed by Gustave Delage and first flown in mid-1917, the Sesquaplane, powered by a 160-horsepower Gnome 9N rotary engine, featured a 26-foot 3-inch wingspan, a top speed of 122 miles per hour, and twin Vickers machine guns. Rejected by the French Air Service in favor of the sturdier SPAD XIII, it found a home with the American Expeditionary Force in 1918, equipping the 94th and 95th Aero Squadrons where aces like Eddie Rickenbacker flew it to fame despite its vulnerability to wing fabric tearing and dives. Over 297 were delivered to the U.S., serving in combat over the Western Front until replaced later that year. The Fokker DR-1 is an iconic relic of World War I aviation, forever linked to the legend of Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron, and emblematic of Germany's desperate innovation in 1917. Introduced in August 1917 and designed by Anthony Fokker and Reinhold Platz, this triplane, powered by a 110-horsepower Oberursel rotary engine, featured a compact 23-foot 7-inch wingspan and a top speed of 103 miles per hour. Its three-wing design, inspired by the Sopwith triplane, granted exceptional maneuverability and climb rate. It was armed with twin Spandau machine guns that made it a deadly dogfighter despite structural fragility and engine unreliability. Though only 320 were built due to production challenges and its late arrival in the war, the DR-1's agility terrorized Allied pilots, cementing its fearsome reputation in the hands of aces like Richthofen, who scored his final victories in it before his death in April 1918. The Sopwith F-1 Camel, introduced in June 1917, was one of World War I's most legendary fighter aircraft. Armed with twin Vickers machine guns synchronized to fire through the propeller, it earned a fearsome reputation for agility, thanks to its torque-heavy design, though this made it notoriously tricky for novice pilots, contributing to many training accidents. Over 5,490 were built, and it claimed more enemy aircraft, around 1,300, than any other Allied fighter, excelling in dogfights against foes like the Fokker DR-1 and D.VII on the Western Front. The Camel's blend of brilliance and brutality, piloted by aces like Canada's William Barker, cemented its status as a quintessential symbol of aerial warfare's savage evolution. The SPAD XIII was a pinnacle of World War I fighter design, a French masterpiece that solidified Allied air dominance in the conflict's final year and carried the torch of its S-7 predecessor to new heights. First flown in April 1917, the S-13 boasted a 27-foot wingspan, a 220-horsepower Hispano-Suiza 8B engine, and a top speed of 131 miles per hour. It was armed with twin Vickers machine guns, a firepower leap over the S-7's single gun. Entering service in late 1917, over 8,400 were produced, equipping French aces like René Fonck, who scored 75 victories, and American pilots of the 94th Aero Squadron, including Eddie Rickenbacker. Its robust frame excelled in dives and high-speed pursuits, though it demanded skill to counter its stiff handling. Widely used on the Western Front, it outclassed German foes like the Fokker D.VII in durability if not agility, retiring post-war as a symbol of victory. Developed by Johnny Caproni and entering service in 1917, the CA-36 was an advanced variant of the CA-3 series, the three-engine biplane with 74-foot wingspan, powered by Isotta Fraschini engines producing a combined 450 horsepower. Capable of carrying up to 1,764 pounds of bombs and armed with multiple Fiat Ravelli machine guns, it was a formidable heavy bomber for its time, used extensively by the Italian Army and Navy, and even the American Expeditionary Force for long-range missions against Austro-Hungarian targets. Its wooden frame and fabric skin belied a robust design, featuring detachable outer wing panels for easier storage, a practical innovation for wartime logistics. Though production ended with around 300 units across the CA-3 series, the CA-36's influence lingered, with some serving into the 1920s. The Halberstadt CL-4 is a striking example of Germany's tactical ingenuity in World War I aviation, blending agility with ground attack prowess in the war's final years. Introduced in 1918, this two-seat biplane was an evolution of the earlier CL-2, powered by a 160-horsepower Mercedes D3 engine and boasting a compact 35-foot wingspan, which enabled a top speed of around 103 miles per hour. Designed for close support missions, the CL-4 carried a forward-firing Spandau machine gun, a rear parabellum for the observer, and up to 220 pounds of bombs or grenades, making it a versatile weapon against Allied trenches and troop concentrations on the Western Front. Its lightweight wooden frame, reinforced with plywood and fabric, offered maneuverability that heavier bombers lacked, earning it praise from German crews despite the late-war chaos limiting its production to around 200 units. The CL-4's brief but intense service underscores the escalating role of air-ground coordination, a legacy of tactical aviation that resonates in military doctrine to this day. The Fokker D.VII was one of the most formidable fighter aircraft of World War I, a late-war masterpiece that epitomized German engineering and shifted aerial combat dynamics in 1918. Designed by Anthony Fokker and Reinhold Platz, the D.VII first took flight in January 1918, powered by a 160 to 185 horsepower Mercedes or BMW engine, achieving speeds up to 120 or 124 miles per hour. Its thick cantilever wings, spanning 29 feet 3.5 inches, and sturdy welded steel frame offered exceptional stability and maneuverability, while twin Spandau machine guns delivered lethal firepower. Entering service in April 1918, it quickly gained a fearsome reputation among Allied pilots, who noted its ability to outclimb and outturn rivals like the Sopwith Camel. So potent was its impact that the Armistice terms specifically demanded Germany surrender all D-7s. The Lizac 11 was a bold yet ill-fated American attempt to enter the World War I fighter arena, a project that arrived too late to shape the conflict but revealed the nation's nascent aviation ambitions. Designed in 1918 by the Lowe, Willard and Fowler Engineering Company under Army oversight, the Lizac 11, short for Le Perret United States Army Combat, was a two-seat biplane powered by a 400-horsepower Liberty 12 engine, boasting a 41-foot 7-inch wingspan and a top speed of 136 and cruising speed of 118 miles per hour. It was armed with twin Marlin and twin Lewis machine guns for offense. Conceived by French designer Georges Le Perret, it aimed to rival European fighters like the SPAD XIII, but only 2 prototypes flew before the Armistice halted production, with a handful more completed for testing thereafter. Its sleek wooden frame and ambitious design hinted at potential, yet its late debut and the war's end relegated it to obscurity, never seeing combat. The Kettering aerial torpedo, often called the Kettering bug, represents a groundbreaking yet underappreciated chapter in the history of unmanned flight and military technology during World War I. Developed in 1918 by Charles F. Kettering with input from Orville Wright and the U.S. Army, this pioneering cruise missile was a small, pilotless biplane powered by a 40-horsepower De Palma 4-cylinder engine designed to carry 180 pounds of explosives over a range of 75 miles. Launched from a wheel dolly and guided by a preset gyroscope and altimeter, it would shed its wings upon reaching its target and dive to detonate, a radical concept for precision strikes long before drones became commonplace. Though tested successfully, the bug never saw combat as the war ended before production ramped up, with only a handful built. The Martin MB-2 is a landmark in American aviation history, marking the United States' first domestically designed bomber to enter large-scale production and signaling a shift from reliance on foreign designs during World War I. Ordered in June 1920 by the U.S. Army Air Service and built by the Glenn L. Martin Company, the MB-2, later redesignated NBS-1 for Night Bomber Short Range, was a twin-engine biplane with 74-foot wingspan. It was powered by 2 420-horsepower Liberty 12-8 engines, and was capable of carrying up to 3,800 pounds of bombs at a modest 99 miles per hour. While only 20 were initially built by Martin, its design was farmed out to Curtiss, LWF, and Aeromarine for a total of 130 units, reflecting the Army's practice of diversifying production. Its folding wings, a novel feature, ease storage and cramp hangars. The MB-2's most celebrated moment came in July 1921, when, under Brigadier General Billy Mitchell's command, it sank the German battleship Ostfriesland off Virginia, proving air power's potential against naval targets and stirring controversy over military priorities. The G-3 target glider was developed as part of a series of unpowered gliders designed for U.S. Army Coast Artillery anti-aircraft training. Launched aloft by a tow plane, the G-3 would glide for several minutes after release, providing gunners a slow-moving aerial target to hone their skills, a precursor to modern drone targets. The Eberhard SE-5E was a fascinating American adaptation of a British classic, reflecting the United States' efforts to bolster its aviation capabilities in the aftermath of World War I. Originally designed as the Royal Aircraft Factory SE-5A, the SE-5E emerged in 1922 when the Eberhard Steel Products Company rebuilt 50 surplus airframes for the U.S. Army Air Service, swapping the 200-horsepower Hispano-Suiza engine for a 180-horsepower Wright Hispano-E and encasing the fuselage in plywood for added durability. With a 26-foot 9-inch wingspan, a top speed of around 120 miles per hour, and armed with a single machine gun, it served primarily as an advanced trainer rather than a frontline fighter. Serving as a training aircraft, the SE-5E played a crucial role in honing American pilot skills during peacetime. The consolidated PT-1 Trusty was a cornerstone of early American military aviation training, a reliable biplane that shaped the skills of countless U.S. Army Air Service pilots in the 1920s. Introduced in 1924 by the Consolidated Aircraft Corporation, the PT-1 was powered by a 180-horsepower Wright Hispano-E engine, had a 34-foot 9.5-inch wingspan, a top speed of 99 miles per hour, and a rugged wooden fabric frame with tandem open cockpits. Over 221 were built as primary trainers following a 1923 Army competition win, serving as the Air Service's standard trainer at bases like Brooks and Kelly Fields, where its forgiving handling and durability earned it the Trusty moniker from cadets transitioning from ground school to wings. Being a training aircraft, it saw no combat and was phased out by the early 1930s. The PT-1's legacy lies in its foundational role, quietly preparing a generation of aviators, many destined for World War II cockpits. The de Havilland DH./82A Tiger Moth is an enduring symbol of aviation's training legacy, a humble yet indispensable biplane that shaped generations of pilots during and beyond World War II. Designed by Geoffrey de Havilland and first flown in 1931, the DH.82A was an evolution of the earlier DH.60 Moth, featuring a 120-horsepower de Havilland Gypsy Major engine, a 29-foot 4-inch wingspan, and a top speed of around 104 miles per hour. Its simple wooden fabric construction, tandem open cockpits, and forgiving flight characteristics made it the backbone of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, training countless RAF pilots for combat aircraft like the Spitfire. Entering service in 1932, it remained a staple into the 1950s, also serving in reconnaissance and liaison roles during the war. The Kellett K2 K3 autogyro is a compelling example of pre-World War II innovation, blending the promise of rotary wing flight with practical military aspirations. Developed by the Kellett Autogyro Corporation, the K2 first flew in 1931, featured a 165-horsepower Continental R670 engine, a 40-foot rotor span, and stubby wings for added lift, and reached speeds of about 100 miles per hour. The K3, an upgraded variant introduced in 1932, boasted a more powerful 210-horsepower Kinner C5 engine, enhancing its performance for short takeoffs and slow flight reconnaissance, ideal for observing enemy movements. Though only about 24 were built, the U.S. Army evaluated these two-seat, open cockpit machines for artillery spotting and liaison roles, reflecting the era's quest for versatile aircraft before helicopters eclipsed autogyros. The Douglas O-38F was a sturdy relic of America's interwar aviation, a versatile observation plane that quietly supported the U.S. Army Air Corps during the 1930s transition from biplanes to modern aircraft. Introduced in 1931 by Douglas Aircraft, the O-38F was powered by a 625-horsepower Pratt & Whitney R1690 radial engine, boasted a 40-foot wingspan, and a top speed of 152 and cruising speed of 128 miles per hour. Built for reconnaissance, artillery spotting, and coastal patrol, it carried a .30 caliber machine gun that could carry up to 100 pounds of bombs. Serving primarily with National Guard units into the late 1930s, it saw no combat but proved its worth in exercises and in Alaska's rugged terrain. The Curtiss P-6E Hawk was a dazzling yet fleeting star of America's interwar Air Force, a fighter that married aesthetic flair with the last hurrah of biplane supremacy in the early 1930s. Unveiled in 1932 by Curtiss Wright, the P-6E featured a sleek, streamlined fuselage, a 31-foot 6-inch wingspan, a 600-horsepower Curtiss V1570 Conqueror engine that pulled it to a maximum speed of 204 and cruising speed of 167 miles per hour, and was armed with two .30 caliber machine guns. Only 46 were built for the U.S. Army Air Corps, serving with pursuit squadrons like the 17th and 94th, where vibrant paint schemes, think the iconic Snow Owl livery, made it a standout at air shows and a symbol of peacetime pride. Though nimble and favored by pilots, by the mid-1930s it was outclassed by emerging monoplanes and was retired from frontline service by 1937. The Boeing P-12E, a spirited emblem of America's interwar pursuit aviation, was a nimble biplane fighter that bridged the gap between World War I relics and the monoplane revolution of the 1930s. Introduced in 1931 by Boeing, the P-12E was powered by a 500-horsepower Pratt & Whitney R1340-17 radial engine, had a 30-foot wingspan, a top speed of 189 miles per hour, and was armed with 230 caliber or 130 and 150 caliber machine guns. It served with units like the 20th Pursuit Group, excelled in agility and climb rate, but its open cockpit and fabric-covered wings marked it as a product of a waning era. As monoplanes like the P-36 emerged in the late 1930s, it was retired from frontline duty but lingered in training roles into World War II. The Boeing P-26A Peashooter was a groundbreaking milestone in American aviation, heralding the U.S. Army Air Corps' shift from biplanes to monoplanes and embodied the rapid technological strides of the early 1930s. First flown in March 1932, the P-26A was powered by a 500-horsepower Pratt & Whitney R1340 Wasp radial engine, had a 28-foot wingspan, a top speed of 234 and cruising speed of 199 miles per hour, an all-metal fuselage, and was armed with 230 caliber machine guns or a mix with 50 caliber. Entering service in 1933, the P-26A served with pursuit groups like the 20th, outpacing biplanes like the Boeing P-12E in speed and currency, though its open cockpit and fixed gear revealed lingering obsolescence. Deployed in the Philippines and Panama Canal Zone, it saw minor combat with Filipino forces in 1941 but was outclassed by Japanese Zeros, being retired by 1942. The Martin B-10 stands as a transformative artifact of the 1930s, heralding the dawn of modern bomber design and shifting the U.S. Army Air Corps towards strategic air power. Unveiled in 1932 by the Glenn L. Martin Company, the B-10 was a sleek, all-metal monoplane with a revolutionary enclosed cockpit, retractable landing gear, and an internal bomb bay capable of carrying 2,260 pounds of ordnance. Powered by twin Wright R1820 engines, it had a maximum speed of 215 and cruised 183 miles per hour, faster than many fighters of its day, and boasted a range of 1,370 miles. Entering service in 1934, it outclassed the biplanes it replaced and proved its mettle in exercises, signaling America's growing aerial ambition amid rising global tensions. While it saw limited combat, notably with Dutch forces in World War II's early Pacific theater, the B-10's real impact was technological, paving the way for successors like the B-17 and affirming the bomber's role as a cornerstone of 20th century warfare. North American O-47B is a robust embodiment of late 1930s American military aviation, designed to modernize the U.S. Army Air Corps' observation fleet as tensions brewed globally. First flown in 1937 by North American Aviation, the O-47 featured a sleek, all-metal monoplane design with a 46-foot 4-inch wingspan, was powered by a 1,060-horsepower Wright R1820 radial engine, and achieved a top speed of 227 and cruising speed of 200 miles per hour. It excelled in artillery spotting and battlefield surveillance, served a crew of 3, had retractable landing gear, glass windows in the belly for enhanced reconnaissance, was armed with 2 forward-firing and 1 flexible 30-caliber machine guns, and could haul 200 pounds of bombs. O-47Bs served primarily with stateside and National Guard units into World War II, but they were quickly outpaced by faster, more specialized aircraft. The Schulglider SG-38, a simple German training glider designed in 1938, was used during World War II primarily to train Luftwaffe pilots and Hitler Youth in basic flight principles before they progressed to powered aircraft or combat gliders. Constructed with a wooden frame and fabric covering, it had a single seat, a 36-foot wingspan, and relied on a bungee cord or tow launch, offering a glide ratio of about 10:1 for short, control flights. While not a combat aircraft, its widespread use, over 10,000 were built, helped build Germany's aviation skill base, supporting the war effort indirectly until Allied advances curtailed training programs by 1944. The Northrop A-17A was a significant milestone in the interwar American military aviation evolution, encapsulating the technological and tactical shifts of the late 1930s. Introduced in 1937 as an advanced attack aircraft for the U.S. Army Air Corps, the A-17A was a sleek, low-wing monoplane powered by an 825-horsepower Pratt & Whitney R1535 engine and was capable of speeds exceeding 200 miles per hour. With its retractable landing gear, all-metal construction, and capacity to carry up to 654 pounds of bombs, It marked a leap beyond the fabric-covered biplanes of the previous decade, reflecting the military's pivot toward faster, more versatile ground attack platforms. The aircraft saw limited combat use, most notably with foreign air forces like Peru and Sweden, but its real legacy lies in its role as a testbed for design innovations that influenced later bombers. Introduced in 1939, the North American aviation BT-14 was a low-wing monoplane trainer that featured a rugged all-metal fuselage, had a 42-foot wingspan, a single 450-horsepower Pratt & Whitney R985 engine, and was capable of reaching speeds around 175 miles per hour. Designed to bridge the gap between basic trainers and combat aircraft, the BT-14 offered improved performance and handling, preparing thousands of U.S. Army Air Corps cadets for the complexities of fighters and bombers. While it lacked the glamour of frontline warbirds, its reliability and widespread use made it a cornerstone of the military's expansion in the late 1930s and early 1940s. The Ryan YPT-16 was a pioneering step in American military aviation training, notable for being the first monoplane primary trainer acquired by the U.S. Army Air Corps. Introduced in 1939 by the Ryan Aeronautical Company as a military adaptation of the civilian Ryan STA, it featured a sleek low-wing design with a 30-foot wingspan, was powered initially by a 125-horsepower Monasco L365 engine, later often refitted with a Kinner R440 radial, and reached speeds of about 125 miles per hour. Its all-metal fuselage and fabric-covered wings proved ideal for teaching cadets basic flight skills at bases like Randolph Field, and this success paved the way for over 1,200 subsequent Ryan trainers, PT-20, PT-21, and PT-22, through World War II. While it never saw combat, the PT-16's reliability made it a foundational tool in preparing pilots for the aerial demands of the 1940s. The Fairchild PT-19 Cornell was a vital workhorse of World War II pilot training, embodying America's urgent mobilization of air power through a simple yet effective design. First flown in 1939 by Fairchild Aircraft, the PT-19 was a low-wing monoplane with a 36-foot wingspan, was powered by a 175-horsepower Ranger L440 engine, reached a top speed of 124 and cruising speed of 106 miles per hour, and featured tandem open cockpits tailored for primary instruction. Over 7,700 were built starting in 1940, serving the U.S. Army, Air Forces, RAF, and civilian schools under the Civilian Pilot Training Program. Its stability and ease of maintenance made it ideal for novices at bases like those in Texas and California. While it was not a combat aircraft, the PT-19's impact was profound, training tens of thousands of Allied pilots, many bound for fighters like the P-51, before being phased out post-war for advanced trainers like the T-6 Texan. The Hawker Hurricane Mark IIA was a pivotal evolution of the unsung battle of Britain Hero, a rugged fighter that bolstered the Royal Air Force's resilience during World War II's early years. Introduced in late 1940, the MK.IIA upgraded the original Hurricane with a more powerful 1,260-horsepower Rolls-Royce Merlin 20 engine, boosting its top speed to around 340 and cruising speed of 238 miles per hour. Armed with 830 caliber Browning machine guns, it excelled at intercepting Luftwaffe bombers and engaging escorts, playing a critical role in defending Britain's skies when Spitfires alone couldn't stem the tide. While less glamorous than the Spitfire, its reliability and adaptability solidified the Hurricane's legacy as a workhorse that helped turn the war's momentum. Introduced in 1940 by Curtiss Wright, the O-52 was a two-seat high-wing monoplane that was powered by a 600-horsepower Pratt & Whitney R1340-51 radial engine, had a 43-foot wingspan and a top speed of 215 miles per hour, and was armed with one fixed and one flexible 30 caliber machine gun for light defense. Built for reconnaissance and artillery spotting, 203 were delivered to the U.S. Army Air Corps in 1941, but its fabric-covered control surfaces and lack of armor or speed rendered it obsolete against modern fighters by the time America entered the war. Most O-52s served briefly in training or stateside patrol roles, some even spotting submarines off the Gulf Coast, but were phased out by 1943 for faster liaison planes like the L-5. And there you have it. Our journey through the early years gallery at the U.S. Air Force Museum comes to a close. From the fragile wings of the Wright 1909 military flyer to the rugged fighters of World War I and beyond, these pioneers of flight didn't just defy gravity, they reshaped history. Thanks for soaring with us through this incredible era. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time as we climb higher into the skies of the past.